Hi, everybody, and welcome to our presentation on finances and future planning for loved ones with disabilities and their families. Today, we're going to talk about future planning, specifically looking at financial, government benefits and credits, estate planning, some wills and trusts, and substitute decision-making and capacity issues. We created this. Oh, also, I just wanted to actually go back and just mention, did I go back? No, there we go. Okay. Rosemary and I work mostly with children and their families from Ontario. And so we're most familiar with those types of resources that are from Ontario. Of course, there are some programs that are federal, which would apply to everybody across Canada. So just be sure to consult with your local team if you are from another province. We will do our best to try to add in some information where we can about other provinces. Also, beyond the scope of this presentation, just because of time, are maybe other services and non-government funding that might be relevant to future planning, like charities, attendant care, things like that. We're just not able to cover that today. Okay. So back to the planning timeline. So this is we just created this as a rough idea to give you a sense of when you might want to apply for different programs, funding, and services. So I won't go into detail here because we'll be covering it a little bit in the presentation, but at any time you would be able to apply to the disability tax credit and registered disability savings plan if you're eligible. You, as a parent, can write your own will, and you can claim medical expenses on your income tax return. Between the ages of 0 and 18, that would be when you would apply for children's benefits, the Canada Child Benefit, something that is eligible for all families who have children. Assistance for children with severe disabilities and special services at home, these are Ontario benefits. And then also when they're a child, it would be a good time to make a joint bank account, which they will need later as they get older. At 16, in Ontario anyway, we can start registering for what's called Developmental Services Ontario for those who are eligible, and we might consider power of attorney for personal care. Age 17 would be a good time to complete taxes for your child becoming an adult, to increase their access to various benefits, and apply for income supports. For Ontario, it's the ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program. And at age 18, there is the new Canada Disability Benefit, and then it would be a time to consider power of attorney for property and apply for guardianship if needed. Okay. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the children's benefits because we're kind of focusing more on the future, but just a quick reference here. The Canada Child Benefit, I think most people who have children are probably already receiving that here. It's a monthly payment from the government to help eligible families with the costs of raising children. The Child Disability Benefit, it's a tax-free monthly payment made to families who care for a child under the age of 18 with a disability. You must have the disability tax credit to be eligible for this, which we will talk a little bit more about. The ACSD, or Assistance for Children with Severe Disabilities, this provides monthly funding to families eligible in Ontario. It's to cover extraordinary costs related to a disability, and eligibility is based on the disability, the household income, family size, and what your expenses are. So again, not all families are eligible even within Ontario. And special services at home is a funding that helps with children with disabilities under the age of 18 to pay for services and supports like respite and recreation. And the eligibility is based on the need for extra support. This is not an income-based one, and it is provincial as well. So I'm sorry, just going through that really quickly here. Disability tax credit. This is a tax credit that reduces your total tax bill by, as you can see here, $9,872, and an additional $5,758 if your child is under the age of 18. And you can add, or you can request readjustments as well, going back. The disability tax credit is a kind of a gateway to a number of other benefits or things that you can claim on your taxes. Here's a few examples. The child disability benefit. So that is the one I mentioned earlier. It's automatic. You're automatically assessed for that if you're receiving the disability tax credit. It is based on income, and the maximum amount is listed there. The registered disability support savings plan is something that we'll talk about in the next slide, and that one you're eligible to apply for once you have the disability tax credit. The Canada Caregiver Credit, this is a non-refundable tax credit for individuals who financially support a dependent with a physical or mental impairment, and it is based on net income, and you can see some of the amounts there. So in addition, you can make other claims like attendant care claims. There's a home accessibility tax credit and an increased child care deduction limit. So that's all these things are if you receiving the disability tax credit, you can potentially access all of these other benefits as well. Just briefly, the disability tax credit, it's not based on a particular diagnosis per se, so it's really more about how, this here will show you. So for example, markedly restricted in at least one of the basic activities of daily living, or significantly restricted in two or more of the basic activities of daily living. And also in addition, it must be prolonged. It's supposed, it means the impairment has lasted for a continuous period of up to of at least 12 months and be present all or substantially all of the time. A physician typically will fill out forms, and or sometimes a physiotherapist, occupational therapist can fill it out as well. Okay. So the RDSP, the Registered Disability Savings Plan, it's a savings plan intended to help parents and others save for their long-term financial security of the person who has the disability. So you are eligible to apply for it once you have the disability tax credit. The government provides matching funds through grants and bonds. But it really cannot benefit from the grant unless funds are withdrawn after the age of 59. Exceptions can be made with a letter from a physician. And so the eligibility, as I mentioned, you have to be receiving the disability tax credit. You must have a social insurance number and be a resident under the age of 16. We really recommend consulting with a financial planning professional to determine if this is the appropriate one for you or if other savings options might be more suitable. Okay, the Canada Disability Benefit, this is new this year. Some of you may have heard of it or accessing it already. So this is a federal benefit for low-income Canadians up to $2,400 per year. The payments are calculated on your adult child's adjusted net income, so not the parent's income, but the 18-plus-year-old with a disability. So you can have some income from work, up to $10,000 will be exempt. So you have to be 18 to 64 years old. You have to file a federal income tax return. And so I'm starting to recommend to families to look at helping your 17-year-old to an 18-year-old to do their taxes so that they can access some of this funding. And they have to be approved for the disability tax credit. So this is income and health benefits. All provinces have some form of income assistance programs for people with disabilities. In Ontario, it's the ODSP, or the Ontario Disability Support Program. So this one is, this slide is specifically for the ODSP, just to give you an idea. I know a lot of families have questions about this in our clinic. So basically, they will pay for basic needs and shelter a certain amount per month. Listed there, and then other things, other health benefits like prescription drugs, dental and vision, transportation, disability-related costs, help with mobility devices, repair and maintenance. There are definitely asset and income limits, which we won't get into the details here, but you need to be an Ontario resident, ages 18 to 65, although in Ontario you can start applying at 17 and a half. You need to be financially eligible and a person with a disability. I've listed there some other provinces that have probably similar income health benefits, but you'll need to really look at the specific eligibility and benefits for each of the provinces. And then developmental services. So Again, all provinces have some form of services for people. This is specifically for adults with developmental disabilities, so it doesn't apply to all people. A person with a developmental disability is typically confirmed by a psychological assessment that might have been done when they were a child to determine if they're eligible, at least in Ontario. So here it's called DSO, Developmental Services Ontario, and that is the gateway to all the services for adults with a developmental disability, including funding, which is called passport funding, and that is basically funding for participation in the community. But they also have other services, respite, therapies, case management, things like that. And I already kind of mentioned the eligibility must be an Ontario resident and have a developmental disability. So I think those are all of the funding that I was going to talk about. I'm just going to turn it over to Rosemary now to discuss estate planning.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. As Penny was saying earlier, we work in Ontario, and so our expertise is in Ontario, and I am only accredited to practice law in Ontario. So unluckily for me, in this presentation, everything having to do with estate planning and substitute decision-making and healthcare consent and all that sort of thing varies by province. So I'm attempting to give a bit of an overview for the entire country, but I hope basically through this presentation to just plant a seed to flag things for you to explore, because as Penny said, we don't have the time in this presentation to really delve into everything you need to know, but I wanted to give kind of an overview of the issues so that you could do some further research, and we'll have some resources at the end that you can explore a little bit more. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was estate planning, and that's estate planning for you, the parent. So essentially for anyone who's a parent, or really anyone with any type of property, it's a good idea to get a will. And there's a few reasons for that, and there's some extra reasons for people who have children with a disability. Generally speaking, a will is useful to make sure that your estate passes in accordance with your wishes, rather than sort of the standard laws of intestacy, which is what is called when someone dies without a will. Some people think that if you die without a will, all your money goes to the government. That's not true. But it goes according to a particular ratio between your spouse and your children, depending on where you are. So if you have particular wishes, having a will allow you to say where you want your stuff to go. The other reason is it makes life easier on those who are left behind. It's easier to do the process of estate administration. It's less paperwork. It's just simpler. So those are some of the other reasons to do a will. For people with children, you can appoint a temporary guardian in your will to say who you want to look after your children in the event that you pass away. That's not, at least in Ontario, not a rubber stamp sort of thing. They would still have to be approved by the court, because the court wants to ensure that children are taken care of by appropriate people. So it's important to put your wishes in terms of who you want to have look after your children. And of course, there's like tax planning reasons for making a will. Yeah? So you can do it either. If you're a couple, usually what people do is it's called a mirror will, where it's basically the same will and reflects each other. But if your spouse doesn't want to for some reason, you can certainly do it by yourself. The big reason for doing a will, if you are a person who has a child with a disability, is to use estate planning tools to ensure that your child remains eligible for provincial disability income supports if you pass away after they turn 18. So that is called a Henson Trust. This is an estate planning tool that essentially allows a person to avoid becoming ineligible for provincial benefits because of inheriting a bunch of money from their parent. So if you have a child who's on ODSP and they inherit more than $10,000 in a year, they will lose their ODSP eligibility. So even if they inherit a big pile of money from you, they may still need ODSP because of the adjacent benefits like prescriptions and all that other kind of thing, not just the monthly income. So this tool was developed through a guy named Henson who tried to do a type of a trust, and it went all the way, through the courts, and it was eventually approved that this type of arrangement would insulate the inheritance from, it would make it exempt from the ODSP rules. And essentially, it sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple. It is a paragraph in your will that says, my inheritance will be split between my two kids, Bob, and one part will go to Bob, and the other part will be held in trust by a specific named person for my child Sue, and that person will use the money for Sue in her best interest. That's sort of roughly what it would say. And this type of tool is available throughout most of the country. And so it's a little bit restricted in Newfoundland and Labrador. In Manitoba, they've got some special aspects to it. And it's not available in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut, but everywhere else, it is possible to put that in your will, and your child can maintain their eligibility for their provincial income supports. So this is not a very obscure type of estate planning tool. If you go to any wills and estates lawyer who specializes in that area, they will be able to do it for you. You don't need a super duper specialized lawyer to do this. You just need a wills and estates lawyer, and they'll be able to advise you, if there's other things that you should be doing in your will, but the Henson Trust is the biggie. So the issues around that are complex are really deciding who's going to be the trustee, because obviously they need to be trustworthy, responsible. They need to have an ability to manage money. You can appoint more than one person, so it could be, an aunt and a sibling or something like that. But at least one of them should be approximately the same generation as your child, so that they will, hopefully be alive during your child's life, in order to manage their money in an ongoing way. So I will just go to the next slide. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about substitute decision making, which is essentially the idea that someone will make decisions on someone else's behalf when that person does not have the legal capacity to make decisions for themselves. So what does it mean to have legal capacity? It basically means, can you understand the consequences of a decision or of failing to make a decision, and can you understand the information needed to make that decision? So legally speaking, capacity is an evolving thing. So you might have the capacity to make one type of decision and not the other type, depending on complexity. You might, it's determined in a moment in time. It's not a fixed thing, usually. So somebody might have the ability to make a type of decision one day and not the next day. I know any of us who have loved ones with Alzheimer's or dementia understand this type of phenomenon. So it's very case specific and time specific. And another aspect is that having the legal capacity to make a decision also doesn't mean that you will make a good decision. It just means you'll understand the consequences of the decision. And sometimes that's hard to swallow for loved ones when they're making a decision that you don't agree with, but they may still be capable of making that decision. So substitute decision-making is the system that we have come up with legally to, for people who can't make decisions on their own behalf. And as I was making this slide, I realized it's practically impossible to summarize the state of substitute decision-making throughout the entire country. It is called different things in different places, and there's different types of substitute decision-making tools depending on sort of the level of intervention needed and the province. So some of the things that are available are powers of attorney, or advanced care directives or medical directives, and those would be for healthcare decisions or for personal care decisions like what you're going to wear, where you're going to live, what you're going to eat, that kind of thing. Powers of attorney are also available for financial decisions. In some parts of the country, supported decision-making is also available. That's, I think, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC has supported decision-making, which is where a person can kind of involve themselves with the decision and help with the decision, but legally it's still considered to be the decision of the supported person. That doesn't exist in Ontario at all. There's also when someone has really very limited decision-making ability or no decision-making ability, you have what's called guardianship orders. I'm not going to go into that too much. That is really for people who cannot make any decisions on their own behalf. And it is a court order, usually speaking. In BC, it's called committee. Yeah, there's some other different forms of substitute decision-making. So that's all to say, look into the type of decision-making that might be available in your own province, because it may become relevant for your family. So capacity to make healthcare decisions, I just wanted to touch on this a little bit, because the capacity to make a healthcare decision is going to be assessed by a clinician on a case-by-case basis whenever a healthcare decision or a consent to treatment is required. And what is surprising to some people is that in Ontario, there's no specific age at which somebody becomes capable of making a healthcare decision. And that is the case in some other provinces as well, Saskatchewan, PEI. There's no particular age. So if you have a mature 12-year-old who understands everything that's going into the treatment, it's been explained to them by their physician, in an age-appropriate way, what the pros and cons are, and they understand they can make that decision themselves. The parent would not be involved in that decision if the clinician assesses that the patient has the capacity to make the decision. And again, the age at which this healthcare decision-making capacity kicks in is dependent on provincial legislation. So it varies a lot by province, and a lot of the provinces have kind of a assessment of the maturity or the understanding of the minor person. And in some places, there's also like a best interests component. So if the child's making a very, a decision that could be viewed as not in their best interest, there can be other factors that go into it. But I just wanted to flag that. And then my last point is basically that it might be possible for your child to make a power of attorney or a healthcare directive as soon as age 16. So I wanted to flag this because this can be a really helpful and useful tool for people to be able to put down their healthcare wishes, before they're even an adult, legally speaking. They can state their wishes for what will happen to them in the future in terms of interventions, in terms of treatments that they want, in terms of, measures, life-saving measures that they want to be taken or not taken. And so this can be a really empowering process for someone to make this document so that they can express their wishes. And it only becomes operational once they are no longer capable of making that decision themselves. So I just wanted to flag that, and you can discuss it with your children if they're interested in making this type of document. I've just listed okay, so we don't have really any more time, so I'm going to just go a little bit through how to get some more help. For funding questions, you can speak to your social worker or service navigator associated with your medical team, or if you don't have one of those, speak to your medical team for a referral. And for legal questions, my role is basically to give advice to families and patients at SickKids and at Holland Bloorview. And I have a couple of colleagues across the province. There's one at CHIO and one at London Children's Hospital. So if your children are being treated at those hospitals, you can speak to your team or your social worker for a referral. If you're at SickKids or Holland Bloorview, you can speak to your social worker for a referral to me, and I will talk to you in, one-on-one. And then across the country, there's a couple of other sort of similar programs. IWK in Halifax has a legal health program, which are referrals are made through social work. They don't sort of have an in-house lawyer, but they can get you some legal advice. And Montreal Children's Hospital also has a medical legal partnership, so they have a relationship with Pro Bono Quebec, and you can get referrals through social work for that as well. And we also have a list of resources for financial planning and for legal resources, so I think we're going to be sending out the slides, and you can just delve into that. Thanks very much.